Good evening. I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. As Arizona's official voter education agency, Clean Elections is proud to sponsor these debates. Our mission is to ensure that you have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions about the issues that impact your life, and head to the polls with confidence. To make sure your voice is heard, please keep these upcoming deadlines in mind. October 5th, voter registration deadline. October 7th, early voting begins, and November 3rd, General Election Day. If you're watching this debate live, we want to hear from you. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time using one of the following methods. Email debates@kc-a.com, text 480-769-9511, phone 480-937-1253. Thank you for joining us and for staying engaged in our democracy. For more resources to help you prepare for the November 3rd general election, please visit our website at azcleanelections.gov. Enjoy the debate.
Good evening, and welcome to the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 12. I'm Nicole Ludden, a reporter with the Arizona Agenda, and I'll be your moderator. Tonight, you'll hear from 3 candidates running for 2 state House seats and one of the candidates running for 1 state Senate seat representing Legislative District 12. We'll start with the candidates for the House first, then take a quick break and talk with the Senate candidates. The House candidates participating in tonight's debate are Democrat Armando Montero, Republican David Richardson, and Democrat Stacey Travers. LD12 spans Ahwatukee, West Chandler, and Southwest Tempe, and it leans Democratic. Here's how tonight's debate will go. Each candidate will start with a 90-second opening statement, then we'll spend a few minutes getting to know who these candidates are as people. We'll dig into the core issues facing this district, then ask each candidate to explain how they will vote for one of the propositions on November's ballot. Time permitting, we'll do a rapid fire round and we'll finish with 90-second closing statements. Okay, let's get started. Candidates, thank you so much for being here. We'll start with 90-second opening statements. Armando, you're up first. Tell the voters who you are and why you're running.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, to the commission for hosting this debate. I'm excited to be here. My name is Armando Montero, proud to be running to be your next state representative here in LD12. Currently, I'm in my 6th year serving on the Tempe Union High School District Governing Board. I'm a proud product of our public schools here in LD12, grew up in Ahwatukee, and I've always wanted to give back to the community that made me into the person that I am today. Having gone through, our public schools, I ran for the school board in 2020, right at the year after I graduated, to help bring a young and fresh perspective to some of the conversations that we're having as a school board and as a local community. I got elected at 19 as the youngest person to ever sit on that board's history, served the past 4 years as president of that board. And during my term on the board, we've been able to do some amazing things, from passing one of the most comprehensive mental health policies in the state, continuously being one of the highest paying districts for our teachers and our classified staff, invested in school safety, and completely reshifted our focus to student outcomes. And we've seen the results from seeing straight A's from all of our schools for the first time in our district's history. But that doesn't come without challenges. Public education has been under attack by our state legislature for quite some time, and the turning point for me running for this seat was last year when I had to vote to cut 50 full-time positions from our school budget. And so 50 full-time positions from our budget because of the consistent underfunding we're seeing from our legislature. And as I'm knocking doors, I'm consistently hearing from, whether it's education, healthcare, housing, affordability, water, that people are ready for a new and fresh perspective to the politics that have not been working as usual in our legislature under our current majority. And so I'm proud to be here running with Representative Travers and Representative Contreras to help bring that perspective to these critical issues that we're facing here in Arizona, to bring that experience of someone who has 6 years of governing experience, and to bring a new generation of leadership down to the Capitol, and to represent the people here of LD12, and to bring true bipartisan results to make a government that works for working families. And I'm happy to be here and looking forward to talking about all the important issues tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. David, you're up next. Please tell the voters who you are and why you're running.
Yeah, so thank you for having me tonight. I'm David Richardson. I'm running for the State House here in LD12. I'm an engineer, scientist, an entrepreneur, and a dad, most importantly, to 3 little kids. While I'm still young, I've had a pretty broad career, ranging from software development for national security applications. I've designed orthopedic implants, knee, hip, and spines to relieve pain in the elderly. I've done diagnostic testing for healthcare. I run a healthcare lab, and most recently, what I'm most proud of is my work on developing cancer treatments in oncology. I love solving problems, and I love helping people. And so, part of why I'm running is I inherited an Arizona that helped me live the American dream. I became a first-generation college grad. I was able to start my own business, and I was able to move up in life. I really experienced upward mobility here in Arizona, and I want that to be available to my kids. I want it to be available to the next generation, and to really steward Arizona and leave it to the next generation better than I inherited it. And my job, wherever I've worked, has always been involving people coming to me with problems. And they say, can you design this? Can you solve that? As an engineer, my answer is always yes, it's possible, because I truly believe, I'm an optimist. Anything is possible. So for some of the big problems Arizona is facing, I want to be a part of solving them. And with the question, I love asking, is it possible? Is it possible to have a robust water supply for the next generation? Yes, I say it is possible. And is it possible to give people the choice, both choice and to make sure every child has a quality education? I say it's possible. And can real change be made while working with a legislative seatmate of the opposite party? I'm looking forward to doing that with one of my opponents tonight. I'm creative, I'm tenacious, I'm optimist, and I love people, and I'm good at solving problems. And I'm looking forward to earning, the audience's vote in the upcoming election.
Okay, thank you. And Stacy.
Nicole, I would. It's always interesting to hear the other candidates, because what Mr. Richardson said really resonates. I too chose to run because of my children and wanting to create a better world for them. And I think, along with choosing to serve that, I believe what it means to be an effective representative. For me, sorry, I just want to disclose I'm at my child's curriculum night, and the only space we could find was in the library. So we've got some parents walking through. So thank you to everybody for your indulgence. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. For me, public service isn't about being the loudest person in the room or showing up in every photo op. It's about listening to people, understanding their concerns, doing the hard work to find practical solutions, like we discussed previously. When I came to the legislature in 2022, I knew people wouldn't always agree with me, but I also knew that disagreement doesn't prevent us from getting things done. I've worked to build relationships across party lines and find common ground while staying true to my principles, which I think is something that we can do. And I'm proud of what I've accomplished. As a freshman legislator serving in the minority, I've successfully had more legislation signed by the governor than anyone else since 1990 in the minority. I've worked on legislation supporting veterans, treatment courts, suicide prevention, protecting homeowners from HOA overreach, preserving the Arizona Civil Rights Division, and helping students access refurbished technology. So, and these matter to me. You can see they span the gamut because they represent real people and real problems. So I didn't go to the legislature simply to make a point. I went there to make a difference. And that's what I hope the legacy that I can leave my children with is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our first round of questions, but first, a quick reminder for viewers. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time. You can email debates@kc-a.com, text 480-769-9511, or call 480-937-1253. All right, this first segment is about who you are, not your policy positions, but what shaped you, how you think, and who you'd be if elected to office. Each candidate has 90 seconds to answer. First up, what in your professional background has prepared you for politics and policy, and how will you apply that background if elected to the legislature? David, you're up first for this one.
Yeah, so I alluded to that a little bit in my intro. I love solving problems, and so I'm on patents ranging all sorts of topics, from orthopedics to AI. But I'd say what really helped me the most is probably two things. One of my business partners that I've worked with for over 10 years now is a hardline Democrat, and the other one I suspect might be an anarchist. I can't tell, but we get along because we, people can disagree, or have different cultures. But it's really important that we align on our shared values. And so we can be really effective as a team, especially in a healthcare setting, because we align on the values of wanting to help people. And so I have lots and lots of experience working with people who maybe we can find the shared values, even though we maybe disagree on certain other issues. And I'd say another thing that's really helped me as well is I have really experienced how entrepreneurial capitalism is the way out of poverty for people, not just because I grew up in poverty and then was able to start a business here in Arizona that helped me get out of it. But overseas, I've worked with nonprofits, NGOs, and we've learned that over time, where we brought aid, we created dependence. But when we went to cities and tribes where we helped them to start entrepreneurial projects like farms that funded orphanages or feeding kitchens that were supported by for-profit schools, we were able to transform entire cities. And so I've seen it work. I've seen it work on every continent, even in Africa. And so I know that as we can incentivize, people to be entrepreneurial and support the small business community, it is a direct way of lifting people out of poverty.
Okay, thank you. And Stacy, any professional experience will serve you in this role?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I have a very diverse background. My first one is as a United States Army veteran. And so that makes me very mission driven. I know what the goal is, and it's the strategy of how do I achieve that for my constituents. I have a BS in geophysics from the University of Arizona. So I prefer to do very, data-driven decisions that help inform the legislation that I create and the legislation that I vote on. I was born in Greece, grew up in Greece, and have lived all over the world. And I think a lot of this job really is relationship building. And having had the opportunity of the exposure of so many different cultures and so many different kinds of people, that allows me the opportunity to understand and relate to people from different backgrounds, from different income levels, from different races, from different religions. And I think, really that has helped to lend me, it might not necessarily be a professional experience, but a lived one that allows me to help navigate the legislature when you're dealing with constituents or when you're dealing with other colleagues.
Okay, thank you. And Armando.
Yeah. So I think first of all, I'm a third-year law student. I've worked the past 2 years at a law firm, mostly working with school districts, understanding and giving legal advice on many of the different issues that school districts across our communities are facing. So I think that, as well as my experience on the school board, has really allowed me to understand how the legislation that is passed and signed into law by the governor affects our local communities. I've spent since 2019 knocking on doors here in LD12, talking to the residents every day and understanding the concerns that they have. Quickly learning at 19 years old how to govern, which is not an easy task. Working with people who you may not agree with all the time, and on really difficult and tough decisions. Having first got elected during the COVID-19 pandemic, having to make really difficult decisions that didn't have a right or wrong answer. Having to learn how to navigate a $180 million budget in a continuing declining enrollment environment. How to make sure that we're caring for more than 600 teachers and staff and 12,000 students and families. Trying to understand and work with different diverse backgrounds to understand that the policies that we write, what's on paper has a very different meaning from what's actually going to happen on the ground. And so, that experience has taught me that, in the ways that we write legislation, we write policy, ensuring that we take the time to really talk to the impacted communities and understanding how this is going to impact them. And I think that's something that, in the past 6 years that I've had the chance to do from communities, outside of LD12, from northern Tempe to Ahwatukee to Chandler to the Gila River Indian community, and ensuring that every single student and family feels welcomed in the policymaking environment that we create. And so that's the type of experience that I want to continue to bring to the legislature. I've always had an open door policy with anyone. We may agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, as long as we're having open communication, I think that's where good policy comes out of.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next question. Tell us about the hardest period of your life. How did you get through it, and what did it teach you about yourself? Stacy, you're up first for this one. You're muted, Stacy, if you want to.
Unless you want to hear parents walking by. And now I think I'm turned upside down too.
Yeah, you're sideways, but we can hear you.
That's always fun. I think, the important thing is it doesn't really matter what the circumstances. It's sort of how you came out of it. I'm a product of divorced parents. When I was 14, we moved back to Greece. It was, interesting kind of navigating, feeling like you have a feet in both worlds, not quite American, but not quite Greek. When I was in the military, it was basic training was so traumatic that I used to in my sleep, no drill, no ammo, drill sergeant, no, no drill, no ammo. And so you just kind of, you face it, you get on with it. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had more, more specifics for you, but it's rather I put myself, I paid for my own education going through college, or, being the child of a, product of a divorce. At one point I was so poor in Boston that all I could eat was elbow macaroni and tomato paste. And, if what doesn't, kill you only makes you stronger. And I think it allows you the empathy when you're dealing in this job with other people, that you have that experience, that you could imagine yourself having had that experience of not having enough money to pay for something, or feeling other than, or trying to do the best that you can with what you've got. And I think that's the mark of a good legislator.
Thank you. And Armando, tell us about the hardest period in your life and what it taught you about yourself.
Yeah, so I think the hardest period that I've experienced is really what got me involved in local politics in the first place. When I first transitioned to high school, I went through a lot of my own mental health struggles. In my sophomore year at Desert Vista, ended up losing a good friend of mine to suicide. And that experience and that grief is really what it turned my eye to the change that we can have when we organize communities together and really feel the impact of the issues that we're facing. We turned that grief into showing up at the school board meeting saying, hey, we're young people in your district, and we want to help create some more advocacy and awareness to ensure that we get more funding for school counselors, psychologists, social workers, etc. And in many ways was able to connect with, then Senator Sean Bowie, and working on mental health legislation to work with our city councils and getting more resources to our schools and our communities, such as the Care 7 youth specialist across our schools. And I think that that's a lesson for me in terms of, why I ended up stepping up to run is I think having that lived experience of what it means to go through something troubling and to be able to come out of that and be able to make a tangible difference for so many different lives. I've always said that at the end of my term, and whether or not I get elected here to the legislature, if we're able to make one life better, or save one life, or make one life easier, then our job is accomplished. And I think that perspective and that experience that I went through has really shaped the way that I view governance and policymaking, and something I'll continue to carry to the legislature.
Okay, thank you. And David.
I think there's this saying like hardship builds character, but I really think that hardship reveals character, and then you kind of confronted with a choice that can build it next once you do. And depending on my age at the time you asked me, I would have had different answers. The first time, the hardest thing when I was a young man would have been the fact that I was just really into mixed martial arts, and I ended up getting my black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I was so proud of. But as I grew up, I think what has been hard has changed. And so, like, during that time, I actually broke my neck doing MMA. And the hardest thing in my life was forgiving the man that did it. And that was such an experience for me to grow through that. And like, what is forgiveness? And how can you do that? And what gives you the strength to do that? And then, losing family members, there are hard times in business. And I think what I've really realized is that life is hard. And I honestly don't understand. I feel bad for people that aren't able to lean on something bigger than themselves when they go through it. For me, that's God. For people that don't have God, they have something else. And I know that in my life, in my story, like losing family members and other hardships, like it's really leaning on God. And I would have to be just really honest about that, because otherwise, like, how do you do things like forgive someone who maliciously breaks your neck? how do you work with people who are out to do you harm? And I think that is something that's unnatural in somebody's heart, but that's possible. And so when I say that I love people and I love solving problems, I think that directly impacts my perspective on that.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our last get to know you question here. When you first signed up to vote for the first time and had to pick your political party, how did you make that decision? Take us back to that very first time you registered. All right, Armando, you're up first for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I just mentioned, obviously the first issue that I really got into the forefront in politics on was mental health. And so, at that time when we were trying to find the right ways to advocate for change in our communities, at what level of government that was, and truly understanding, who the change makers were, to have this, the first people that I talked to at the time were my legislators. And at that time was then Representative Epstein and Germain and Senator Bowie. And they were the first ones to sit down and understand truly what this means to work with parents of those that have lost students in our districts to make a tangible difference. And I think to me, when it comes to the issues that I care about most and the values that I hold, to care for our neighbor, to love all, to care for a strong public education system, to have quality healthcare and affordable housing. To me, I saw the Democratic Party as those that were fighting for that. Those that were putting people over politics, and those legislators that I looked up to at the time. And so those were the people that I emulated, and why I ended up voting or, registering with the Democratic Party and running as a Democrat for this election.
Okay, thank you. And David, how did you first pick your political party?
Well, I had people around me. I was watching the news ever since I was little. And so I remember, watching elections far before I could vote. And it's just so surprising to me that a lot of the beliefs, that I have now, even as a Republican, are things that I heard the Democrats say in the 90s. And so the parties are all very strange to me now. But basically it just comes down to values. And again, coming back to helping people, I'm a Republican because I believe that kind of our those values are just better at helping people. And I think that, when you hear the three of us talk tonight, we'll find a lot of common ground in wanting to help people, but our approaches will just be different.
Okay, thank you. And Stacy. I'm mute again, Stacy.
Isn't that one of the many charming things about me? So I was 17 when I joined the military, and that was so long ago that I don't even remember how I registered. But being in the military, I was probably registered as a Republican because Republicans always gave us pay raises, and I needed the money back then. And my family had never been particularly political or very engaged, so it wasn't something that I was completely aware of. All I knew, I was getting a pay raise. Am I right? But I think, the more you learn to understand how politics works, and the more divisive I see it has become, and that a lot of the policies from my colleagues across the aisle, I particularly feel are getting more and more harmful as time goes on. It solidifies my resolve that as a Democrat, it is the right path to helping people. As my colleague said, we both want to help people. We just want to get there different ways. And I feel that the Democratic Party is on the right path to helping everybody. And so I've been a registered Democrat as long as I can remember since then. But the little gray cells, they don't work so good anymore. Menopause is set in, and I'm lucky if I can remember what I ate.
Okay, fair enough. We're gonna move on to the core of tonight's debate. These are the issues voters told us matter most in this district. I'll ask a question. Each of you will get 90 seconds to respond, and after all of you have answered, I'll open up a 60-second rebuttal window where you can respond to something another candidate said or add to your own answer. Alrighty, first up, Arizona's universal ESA program has grown dramatically since lawmakers opened it up to every student. What, if anything, would you change about the program, and how should lawmakers account for its future cost when writing the state budget? All right, David, you're up first for this one.
Yeah, well, so I just start by saying I support all types of education. So I like the ESA program because personally, choice, changed my life and the trajectory of my life. I wasn't doing well in school. My mom had the ability and the foresight to put me in a school that had a different culture that kind of fit for me. And for me, that was another public school. And for my sister, that was a charter school. And she moved both of us. And that changed the trajectory of my life. And I believe that the more we can empower parents, because we have such a diverse group of kids in Arizona, the more people like me can be put on a track that's upwardly bound. And so I support the ESAs. I also, again, going back to, is it possible? Is it possible to have ESAs and reduce the amount of have an accountable system? I believe it is. And so I want fraud in no systems. It would be my preference that if you get caught misspending ESA money, you should pay it back sevenfold. And if you can't, there should be severe punishments for that. It should be impossible to take money away, steal money from taxpayers. And so I support accountability, but I am an emphatic supporter of choice for parents. The ESA program, I think it's the most just use of funds for the funds to follow the student. And I believe that we can fund public schools and all forms of education.
Okay, thank you. And Stacy, how do you think lawmakers should account for future costs of ESAs when writing the state?
Thank you for that question. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
I think, my debate colleague, his last statement was, I think everybody should have a choice of education, and I do too. But unfortunately, it's at the expense of the public school system. Over 85% of parents use public school systems, and we already have a perfect storm of lowering birth rates, housing problems. In my district alone, they closed 6 schools. And so that doesn't give my public school parents much choice at this point. One of the schools that closed was KTA, that had 9 apartment buildings. It was low income, it was diverse. Now they have no choice. The school choice that we established in the state of Arizona was being able to have open enrollment, so I can send my kid to any public school or any charter school, anywhere that they want. I actually availed myself of that. My daughter is at one school. We found that wasn't a fit. We took her to another school. What we're seeing with the ESA program right now is that there's not just the waste, fraud, and abuse. There's no academic accountability whatsoever. And there are no safety standards. So one can argue, well, we see that safety standards are breached at the public school too, but at least there is people are going to slip through the cracks, but there is at least a vetting process, fingerprint clearance, background checks that do not exist in the ESA program. The other thing is we have no academic accountability. And I said this the other day, we have parents on Facebook now who are ESA voucher parents who are asking for flat earth curriculum in 2020.
Sorry, Stacy, we're running way past 90. I'm going to have to cut you off there.
So I think we all know there needs to be reform. I think that there should be an existing framework for ESAs. I would like to see it go back. You hit my trigger topic, Nicole. I'm sorry, and I'm very passionate.
I understand.
Thank you, my love.
How about you, Armando?
Yeah, well, I can pick up where Stacy left off. I think, she hit on a good point that even prior to the universal expansion of ESA vouchers, parents and families in Arizona always had a plethora of choices to decide what schools they wanted to attend. But I think the problem we have here is that we have to face the harsh reality that the policy decision under the current universal expansion has been detrimental to our state budget, to our public schools. We were told the purpose of the universal expansion was to help lift low-income students out of the schools that they might attend to attend a school of their choice. But what we're seeing is more than 80% of the families that are utilizing the current program for ESAs have never attended a public school in the first place. What we're seeing is thousands and thousands of dollars and leftover accounts of unused ESA dollars that are sitting in these accounts that could go back to our public schools, to the resources and the students that need them, if they're not going to be used. We don't have clear authority for the Attorney General to prosecute waste, fraud, and abuse in the program right now. This program has cost our state $1 billion. I think we can all agree that the legislature at the time did not intend it to be where it is at today. And we've seen even bipartisan calls to rein in the program and put some basic measures from an income cap on those that are able to utilize the program to ensure that those leftover funds are being put back into our public school system, to ensure that we have academic standards for those using taxpayer dollars. We have no idea to understand what these students are learning, how they're learning, and whether they're meeting the academic standards that all of our public schools are held to. And I think that's important because every student should have the best possible education no matter the route they take. So basic accountability for this program is necessary to ensure that we have our strong public schools, ensure that every child has an equal and strong education in our state.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open up a rebuttal window if anyone wants to respond to something another candidate said. David, I saw you unmute.
Yeah. I mean, first, newly enrolled students this year, 60% of the students in ESAs are coming from public schools. 2 years ago, that was 1 in 5. Now it's 3 in 5, and it's growing. So people that might lose or really suffering from the closing of public schools, they do have choice to the ESAs. Secondly, I would say that the closing of these schools is from poor management by school boards who should have seen this coming for the last 10 years. When there's enrollment is down, and they saw the trend coming for a decade about, and now they're blaming ESAs conveniently when until now it's been demographics. And then I would say in regards to the flat earth, because we could talk about that for a long time, the NIH polls 10% of Americans think the earth is flat, and those aren't homeschoolers. That's a large portion of all types of education. And so I don't know if you guys have ever met a homeschool person, but I'm married to one. She's brilliant, and she has a master's degree. My best employee is a homeschooler. And based on academic standards of going into college, they outperform. So I don't buy those arguments at all.
Okay, briefly.
Yeah. I think Armando, I saw your hand first. Sorry.
Okay, I won't take up too much time. I just want to briefly respond. I think the assertion, that those families are utilizing ESAs because of our closing schools speaks to the larger problem. We are always here in Arizona, bottom of the barrel, almost 50th in the nation for pure per pupil funding for our public schools. What we should be doing is investing in our public schools. That Stacy had mentioned, 85% of the families in this state are sending their kids. So as a school board member, these are some of the most knowledgeable, passionate people to make our strong public schools, but many times we're held hostage by the legislature and the amount of funding that we get, often passing budgets without even knowing how much money we're going to have for the school year. So there's a lot that we can do from the finance side to actually improve our public school system, to pay our teachers properly, and not just say, we'll give the money to you to go somewhere else.
Okay. Stacey, do you have something new to add, or?
Okay. It was just to say that I wasn't suggesting that every single homeschooler isn't qualified to go to higher education or isn't being educated to a standard, but we just don't know. That's the problem. We just don't know. And yes, the problem that we have is because it's a perfect storm. As I said, I acknowledge that it was demographics, lower birth rates, housing, but also when I was first told 2 years ago about the ESAs, it was a $300 million cost. And when I spoke to a colleague, they said, we knew it was going to be more. We didn't care. We just wanted to ram this through anyway. So they knew it was going to cost up to $1 billion, and they lied to the public about it.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. A data center is currently under construction near homes in Ahwatukee in your district. While the state has temporarily stopped offering tax breaks to new data centers, what protection should the legislature require for communities that live next to these facilities? Stacey, you're up first for this question.
So I was one of the ones who voted and helped to negotiate the 3-year tax relief moratorium. And I have been working with our no data center folks to try to find ways to stop or mitigate the build. They are doing an amazing job. They're going back through permitted records to see if there was any missteps. I have managed to get them conversations with the Board of Supervisors to deal with environmental, the AG's office to see what recourse that they have. I also gave them the number of several different land use lawyers to try to help mitigate. Unfortunately, Menlo Park won't meet with anyone. We do have Mr. Robinson going over to California to speak with them to see if there's something else that can be done. I'm a big fan of local control. Local control. What happened to the data centers? Unfortunately, it got permitted back when we didn't know what we knew now. I know that if it had gone through the process this time, it would have been stopped completely. But when it was applied for, it was as a technological center, and nobody knew what that was or what the ramifications were going to be. And so I think it's working. I don't like to preempt, and I don't like to tell local government how to control itself, but I think there definitely needs to be a dialogue so that there's an understanding that we need to be much more thoughtful about data centers if that's what we're going to continue to allow to build in different parts of Arizona.
Okay. And Armando, what do you think? What protections should the legislature require, if any, for these facilities?
Yeah. Well, again, as an Ahwatukee resident with the proposed one on this landing that they're currently building, I've also had the chance to talk with those that are concerned residents in the area, working and listening to the No Data Center Ahwatukee group to truly understand the impacts this is going to have on our local community. And I think that's the root of the problem is we don't know. To Stacey's point, I would have voted if I was in the legislature for the 3-year moratorium on tax incentives for data centers. I think there are real concerns that need to be studied. What are the environmental impacts that these data centers will have? What does this mean to making sure that the energy rates and the increase in energy rates are not being passed on to the consumers in the surrounding area? To ensure that as we're seeing a dire water crisis here in our state, that that the data centers are having responsible use of those resources. We don't have any of that guarantee right now, and without that, what we're seeing in Ahwatukee is they're able to continue down this path with no accountability, no understanding, no answers to the residents that are going to be living right across the street. We don't know what the noise impact will be. We don't know what the environmental impact will be for our surrounding communities and surrounding schools. And so this time, especially when we have this moratorium, gives us the chance as the legislature and policymakers to have a dialogue with our local municipalities and cities to truly understand what this means. We should be listening to these concerned residents and the concerns that they have and being more responsible about where these data centers are being placed. Because there are real concerns and studies that show the impact that this has on local communities. And so I think our job as legislators is to have those tough discussions with our cities and municipalities to put responsible regulations on data centers.
Okay. And David.
Yeah, I think that data center was a strategic mistake by Menlo Digital. I live, within several miles of it as well, so it's of interest to me personally. I think one of the things, they'll say, oh, it doesn't really use that much water. Perhaps that's true. Oh, maybe your rates are guaranteed not to go up. Perhaps, maybe that's true. But the thing that really bothered me the most was an ASU study that showed that these large data centers have these air-cooled systems that within several miles of the data center, it's very likely to be perhaps 3 to 4 degrees hotter. I've got 3 kids. When it's 116, I don't want it to be 120. And at a minimum, they would have to subsidize people's air conditioning bills. If you're going to making where they live 4 degrees hotter without their choice, it's ridiculous. I think it was a foolish mistake for that to go in there. And I'm really pleased to see the democratic process working, the people mobilizing. I'm pleased to see that there will be repercussions on the city council, as there should be. And that's democracy in action.
Thank you. Can you specify if you think the state legislature should have any role in regulating data centers?
If they have to, but it shouldn't have come to this. It has violated a lot of common sense for that data center to be placed where it is. Okay. And I'm pleased to see the action being taken at the city council because it never should have advanced.
Okay. Are there any rebuttals before we move on to the next question? Okay. I'm going to fit in a viewer question here. Viewer wants to know, how will each of you focus on affordability, and do you believe in policies like tariffs? Armando, you're up first for this question.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, because I think this is one of the main concerns that I'm continuously hearing at the doors and talking to LD12 residents. I think we've seen the cost of living continue to skyrocket in the past several years, and to the specific point, I think a large part of that has been driven by policies such as the tariffs that have been imposed by the federal government. We know that those costs have been put and been borne by us, the voters, and the stakeholders here in LD12. Talking to local businesses and truly understanding the impact that has on them, and passing that impact on to customers. But I think it's a larger question of everything. We're seeing healthcare prices continue to increase. We're seeing housing prices become more and more unaffordable for younger generations like me to be able to be a first-time home buyer. I think there's an intersection at all these different issues that we should be focusing on to lower costs. And I think the reason I'm running is to bring that perspective, whether it's ensuring that we're solving our water crisis to not see water rates continue to increase, which has an effect on really everything, to ensure that we're passing responsible policies to build more housing in communities that need them the most, and to ensure that we're stepping up as a state government to fill the gap that we've seen cuts at the federal level for healthcare subsidies that are impacting low and middle income workers. And so I think there's a lot that we should be able to do in stepping up as a state legislature to where the federal government has failed in raising prices.
Okay, thank you. And sorry if I missed it, but it sounded like a no on the tariffs part of that.
No on tariffs, yes.
Okay, thank you. And David, how would you focus on affordability, and do you believe in policies like tariffs?
I think there's a few things that go into affordability. One, I think if you focus on like housing prices and housing affordability, that affects education, because part of the lower enrollment is we have people who maybe can't afford to move, and so people are aging in place. New families aren't coming in, so there's not new students moving in to enroll at public schools. And that's one factor. And to address that, there's a lot of things on the table, but quite simply, it's just supply. We need to build more houses. And I think post-COVID, a great example of this was Austin, Texas. They had a surge of building. And so rents and housing prices have actually gone down in Austin post-COVID. And there's no reason we can't do that here responsibly, to code and with water conservation in mind. But we need to increase the rate and the regulations that might be holding back building. And then in terms of tariffs, to my knowledge, it's not necessarily a local issue. But I'm really looking forward to addressing things like housing affordability. And also in terms of like in healthcare is a big passion of mine, since I work in healthcare. Affordability in healthcare is awful, but we see that elective surgeries, the cost has gone down over time, but for things covered by insurance, it's gone up. And I say that simply to state that to the degree that you can bring in competition, price is always lower. So in the business economy here, the more that we can incentivize competition, going back to ESAs, even for schools, but competition in all sectors brings prices down, brings the quality of services up, and that's how we can address affordability.
Okay, thank you. And Stacy. Oh, muted again.
Tariffs suck. They don't really help the consumer, and I will sort of push back that it isn't a local issue, because what's happening at the federal level is affecting us. It affects us with the products that we buy, the gas we put into our tanks, and the houses, the interest rates and the houses that we want to afford. And so what's happening in Washington, D.C., even though it's a national issue, is having a huge impact on how we live locally. And so yeah, we need to get rid of tariffs. I don't think that our current administration has an understanding of how international trade and international politics works. And unfortunately, we're seeing that at the local level.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to respond to something another candidate said this round? Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one last.
Clarify. I mean, it's kind of obvious that things affect us at the local level, but are we going to set a tariff at the state legislature? No, absolutely not.
No, but we're still. She asked how if you like them or not, and they suck, because of what's happening in Washington. I answered the question.
Okay, we're going to move on to housing. The legislature has increasingly overridden local zoning rules in an effort to increase housing supply, including requirements to allow more middle housing options. Where do you think the line should be between addressing Arizona's housing shortage and allowing cities to control their own development? David, you're up first for this question.
I was a big fan when it passed recently that people could build casitas on their property and allow duplexes. I think that makes a lot of sense. I support that. I support affordable housing. I think we need more units, and in order to catch up, we're like something like 56,000 units short based on population in order to go back. And I think it's a safe assumption that housing in Arizona or in the Valley here is probably 30% higher in terms of cost than it should be if we were just building enough units. And again, we have to, if there are local regulations about safety, we don't want to build things that are going to burn down. We don't want to build things that are unsafe or build things where there's no water. But beyond those things, we can speed things up in terms of the permitting process and make it so that there are new units available. And I know in Tempe specifically, there's insurance requirements for builders that are perhaps unnecessary that keep them from building new condos. And that would do wonders for Tempe to have more condos on the market for reducing prices. So I think there's a regulatory holdup. There's a quote about water. Drought is natural, but water shortage is man-made, and I think housing shortages are the same way.
Okay, so it sounds like you are in support of state preemption of sort of local zoning laws that could create more housing.
Yeah, within reason. I support what was done already by allowing in downtown areas the creation of duplexes and casitas. I think that was a great move.
Okay, thank you. And Stacy, where should the line be between addressing Arizona's housing shortage and allowing cities to control their own development?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's not just about building more housing because we're already sitting on a housing supply that home builders have decided not to exercise their right to. They are creating part of the housing crisis that we're in right now. I think I'm always a big proponent of local control as much as we can. We need to be very thoughtful because what is going to work in Yuma is not going to work in Phoenix, is not going to work in Bisbee. And so, each city council, town, municipality, they know what's right for them. And I don't like regulations either. I don't like paying taxes and I don't like regulations. But I also don't want 40 people in a building collapsing because we cut corners so that we could make permitting faster or more convenient for a home builder or for a construction company. They're there for a reason. So there are potentially some things that we can do to streamline if we have conversations with cities and towns and do what's right for them individually. But as a preemptive measure, there's a reason that we have these regulations, and it's not to piss construction people off or to make it more difficult for homeowners. There's a reason there, and it's for the safety of people. And we've seen over the years how we've gone from bricks and mortar to cardboard and drywall houses that burn up like tinder. And so, whatever is going to be best for each. And the other thing is we've never defined what's affordable. What's affordable to me might not be affordable to somebody else. So there's my answer. I saw your pen. I saw your pen, Nicole.
Yes,
I shut myself up.
Can you specify with things like the middle housing law specifically, were you in support of that measure in terms of preempting local zoning codes?
No, I wasn't. I mean, one of the big problems we had was the historic homes, and how do we thoughtfully add that element of housing to someplace that is that is more established. And I'm not trying to NIMBY. I'm also just trying to be very thoughtful about what we're doing. We can't just put things up willy-nilly and, don't even get me started.
Okay, thank you. And Armando.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Stacy. I don't think this is necessarily an either or. Especially as a local elected official, I tend to err on the side of local control. And I think that, a one-size-fits-all solution isn't always going to be the solution to the crisis that we're solving, right? The issues that we're going to face in different parts of the state and more rural areas isn't going to work here in LD12. I think that this is really where we have, and I think having strong supporters of affordable housing here in LD12, such as Mayor Corey Woods in Tempe and Mayor Kate Gallego, that have taken steps to ensure that we have more units available, different types of units available. I don't think coming in heavy-handed from the state level with preemption is necessarily always the solution. I think, to our point earlier, this is really where our role as a legislator, as legislators, is coming down and understanding, talking to our mayors and our city councils, because they're the ones on the ground creating innovative solutions to a lot of these problems. We're seeing some of the unique programs coming out of Tempe and coming out of Phoenix that, in many ways, we can try to amplify at the state level and figure out what communities that's going to work for. We do have to continue to make sure that we're having the available supply of housing to ensure that younger families are able to move and afford and raise a family. This is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a school district, is young families not being able to afford to move into the district and start a family. And so I think at the end of the day, this is really where a collaborative governance comes into play to ensure that we have a strong relationship. And I think I've been proud of the fact that myself and Representative Travers have built those relationships with our mayors and our city councils to truly understand the issues they're facing and how we can help them as a legislature to solve this issue.
Okay. Would anyone like to respond to another candidate before we move on?
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So it's not about regulation or no regulation. It's about more regulated or less regulated. Because you can look at places like Houston and Austin that have had the building surges and had rents and prices go down, and no one's dying in mass fires or building collapses, because obviously no one wants those types of corners cut. We want safety regulations, but what I'm saying is when it's only the necessary regulations are in place, and I don't believe every regulation is necessary. That when you have regulation light areas that's thoughtful and intentional and smart, that you can have lower prices.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Stacey.
Don't Texas my Arizona.
All right. With that, we're going to move on to our next.
Does that mean we shouldn't build? I don't understand what that means. Are you saying we shouldn't build houses?
You keep citing Texas. This isn't Texas. This is Arizona.
Economics is a fundamental principle. More supply equals lower price.
Not necessarily.
Well, I disagree. Everybody grok it.
Agree to
Go on Claude, go on Google it for yourself afterwards.
I will use the Googles. Thank you, David.
Sorry about that, David. I think you're on a little delay for me, so I'm not trying to cut you off or when you're saying anything, but I am going to move on to the next segment. I'll ask each candidate how they would vote on one of the propositions that will be on Arizona's general election ballot. After I give a short summary, you'll each have 1 minute to tell voters how you would vote and why, and no rebuttals this round. Just tell us what you think. Okay, let's talk about Proposition 142. In summary, this measure would put further restrictions on race and ethnicity-based programs and policies in state and local government, including public schools and universities. It's the anti-DEI proposition. Stacey, you're up first for this one. How do you plan to vote on this measure and why?
I'm going to vote no on all the ballot measures. And I will tell you, part of the problem is, especially with this one, you think what you're doing, and I want to be very thoughtful about this. You think the way that it's written right now, it just prevents public schools and universities, right? But ultimately, it's going to restrict academic freedom, speech, university courses, legitimate diversity programs, particularly, because the restrictions are such and the language is always so broad, these propositions tend to be very poorly written that, if you allow yourself to go down a rabbit hole, you could go down the rabbit hole. And I think that this will restrict a whole lot more than just what's in the language.
Okay, thank you. And Armando, how do you plan to vote on this proposition?
I also will be voting no on this proposition, and I think it speaks to a larger issue that we're seeing down at our state legislature. I think the types of propositions that we're seeing on the ballot this year really show where the priorities lie in our current Republican majority. We've talked about the issues in many ways, finding common ground on things like education and water and housing and healthcare. That's not reflected in these propositions. And I think, especially having been in a public service since 2020, where we're seeing a lot of these culture war issues come into play that at the end of the day have no impact on how we're serving our students and our families. I'm proud of the fact that we have a diverse district. In Tempe Union, we are a majority minority district. We're proud of that. And we find ways to serve every student. And that talks about finding ways that we support specific populations of our students that historically have not gotten the resources that they need. So at the end of the day, when I read this language, we don't know what the effect of this is going to be. What we're seeing is a complete diversion and using political fear and talking points to distract from the issues that are really impacting working families here in Arizona. So I will be voting no on this proposition.
Thank you. And David.
I don't support discrimination, even in the name of trying to right past wrongs. I don't think that's how you right past wrongs at all. And so I'm against discrimination, and I don't think that's how you can teach poor kids, how to make it. By telling them, I can relate to this, that the system's rigged against you, is not what kids need to hear. Kids need to hear, I believe in you, you can do it, let me come alongside you. And so the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action, and obviously we want to teach history and celebrate diversity. But to the degree when that celebration comes into present discrimination today to correct a wrong in the past, fundamentally disagree with that. And so to the degree that this bans that, I would vote yes.
Okay. And that means we've reached closing statements. Each of you candidates will get 90 seconds, and the order is going to be the same as your opening statements. So Armando, whenever you're ready for your closing statement, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for hosting this debate and having the chance for us to talk about the issues all here together. I think at the end of the day, we've seen two different visions here for how we want to solve issues here in Arizona. I'm running because I think it's time that politics as usual down at our state legislature and our Republican majority has not worked. For the first time in our state's history, my generation is set to be worse off than our parents. And I think when we talk about accessibility for our up-and-coming youth and our children, what we're seeing is more and more young people going into an education system that in many ways is determined by a zip code. Those that are going into higher education or community colleges being saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Graduating from those institutions and finding it hard to find a job day to day, being able to pay rent, let alone being able to buy a home for the first time. And I think what we're hearing is that we want people that are able to have bold, new, and fresh ideas at the legislature. They want hope that the issues that we're facing can be solved. Hope that we can have a strong public education system that's not ranked last in the nation. Hope that we can have an affordable healthcare system that one incident won't completely derail your life. Hope that we can be able to have, in their 20s, be able to buy their first home and start a life and have a family. And I think that what we're seeing is legislative Democrats across Arizona have built proposals to make this happen. So at the end of the day, I think, when it comes down to who you're deciding to vote for, I hope the answers you've seen tonight show that you have two candidates here that are willing to put in the work to bring new, bold, and fresh ideas to solve these critical issues. So I not only want to bring that perspective, but as someone who's made history at 19 years old and has served this community for the past 6 years, led that board for 4 years, and has made a tangible difference for the lives of people here in LD12. I hope to continue that, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And David, your closing statement, please.
Yeah, I'm David Richardson. I'm running for the State House, and I'm asking for your vote. I have experience solving big problems. I know what it takes to run a business and what the state can do to make sure that small businesses can thrive. And, as a dad to 3 little ones, I know the burden families have who want the very best for their kids. And as someone who started out in poverty and rose out of it, I know how to give opportunity to people who are struggling. I think we've seen tonight, one of my opponents, Ms. Travers, denies basic economics, and my other opponent, Mr. Montero, who's on the school board, saying he brings fresh perspective. His fresh perspective on the school board was to be the deciding vote to remove police officers from schools. It went so poorly, they had to undo it. I don't think that is a perspective worth promoting to the legislature. we have a diverse district, and it would be my privilege to work with either one of these people at the legislature. But our approaches are quite different. But I'm optimistic about our ability to work together. I'm optimistic about Arizona's future with the right leadership. And so I am asking for one of your votes for the House to vote David Richardson for State House and LD12.
Thank you so much. And Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you to Clean Elections, and thank you once again to everybody for the opportunity. I would like to remind our viewers as I go into my closing statements, my colleagues from across the aisle have been in charge for more than 60 years. And so all the questions that you're asking that are problems with Arizona that we need to fix have all been as the result of the governance of the Republicans for over 60 years. And so I take umbrage with, not having a fresh perspective, because I think something needs to change, because we can't keep down this trajectory. And I think one of those people. I believe in getting things done. I know politics can be divisive and that we don't always agree, as you've seen here today. I hope that we've been respectful to each other in our exchange of ideas, but I don't believe disagreement means have to stop working together. I know that I've shown I can work across party lines, build coalitions, and turn ideas into legislation that becomes law. I'm very proud of the work I've done for veterans, families, homeowners, students, and civil rights. And I'm not finished yet. There are still challenges facing our communities, as we've discussed today. And I believe we need representatives who will listen, work hard, and tackle those challenges instead of simply talking about them. At one point, I wish you had asked us if there had been votes that had gone against our caucus, because I think it's very important to do what's right and not do what is party line. And my fear is that my colleague, as we've seen in past history, will continue to vote party line, regardless of how harmful the legislation is that will become. I can't speak to that, but in my experience, that's the case. I don't promise rainbows and unicorns, but I will promise to listen, ask questions, work with anyone I can, and stand up for what I believe is right. I'm proud of my record, proud of the people I've had the opportunity to serve, and I'm asking for your support. As many of your constituents and my constituents who are watching know, I'm one of the most accessible legislators in the House. If you have any questions about me or my policies, please email me at traversforaz, that's Travers, FORAZ @gmail.com, or go to my website at www.traversforaz.com. I'm always happy to represent. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. And that concludes tonight's debate for the State House and Legislative District 12. Thank you so much to our candidates for being here. And to our voters, thank you for tuning in and informing yourselves ahead of the November 3rd election. For official voter information, you can visit azcleanelections.gov. The debate for the district Senate seat will begin shortly, so please stick with us through this short break. Good evening, and welcome back to the Arizona Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 12. I'm Nicole Ludden, a reporter with the Arizona Agenda, and I'll be your moderator. Tonight, you'll hear from one of the candidates competing for the district Senate seat, Democrat Patty Contreras. The other candidate in this race, No Labels candidate Anthony Ramirez, declined to attend tonight's debate. As a reminder, LD12 spans Ahwatukee, West Chandler, and Southeast Tempe, and it leans Democratic. Since we only have one of the candidates with us tonight, this portion will be a Q&A format instead of a debate, but we'll follow the same general timeline. So let's get started. Patty, thank you so much for being here.
Good evening. Yes.
Thank you. We'll start with a 90-second opening statement. Please tell the voters who you are and why you're running.
Yes. Hi. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're still sticking around for this part of the show. I'm Patty Contreras. I'm running for Arizona Senate. I have been uh, your state legislator, your state representative for the last 2 terms. And I appreciate your support and everything that you've done to support me in this legislature. I am a native of Arizona. I am a third generation Arizonan. I come to this this as a legislator in the legislature. I'm sorry. From being a former work employee of the city of Phoenix, I was a career public servant, and I hope to continue my public service as I have for the last 4 years. Continue my public service as your state senator. Mitzi Epstein has done a wonderful job as our state senator, and I appreciate her a lot. And all, she has decided to go on and do other things, and but I hope to fill her shoes at the state senate and just continue my work and what I've done at the state in this and the house.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll get into the first round of questions. First, a quick reminder for viewers, you can submit a question at any time. Email debates@kc-a.com. You can text 480-769-9511 or call 480-937-1253. All right, let's start with some get to know you questions. Outside of raising your family, what's something you've built, started, or led that you're proud of, and what did it teach you?
Built, started, or led. So I mentioned I work for the city of Phoenix, and one thing that we put together, so I ran senior centers for the city of Phoenix. So I was in charge of 8 of our senior centers, and we had to revamp our IT program, so that we could include all of the seniors. The program that we were using before was going away, and we wanted to do it. So we brought together all of the different stakeholders, all of the different staff, and put together a program that was very, very broad. So what meals people wanted, what programs they wanted to attend, it took attendance, all these types of things. But it was the collaboration, the working together as a team that was very important to me, so that we could get the best product out there, to be able to have our seniors be able to check in. So it was a little check-in process. They used a card, they checked in, and they were accounted for that way. So we were able to do reports. So it was just a matter of bringing a whole bunch of different people together, our programmers, our staff, our seniors, and just working together to figure out what reports we needed, how we were going to get those reports, and how we were going to teach our seniors how to use this new technology and all. So it was just a great program to be a part of and to help lead and to just put together. And I just think collaboration was the key there.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe a time in the last 2 years when you changed your mind about something political and what changed it?
I don't think political. So I'm going to use vaping, I guess. I didn't know a whole lot about the vapes and all, and I kind of figured they were pretty harmless for the most part. People were going to smoke cigarettes or going to vape or whatever they're going to do. But I saw from some colleagues, Republican colleagues, that were bringing in information about the vapes, and they have these little games on them that you play. So whereas industry is talking about it being for adults and older people, older over the 21 and all, we were seeing these games on these vapes that, was really they're trying to entice the younger generation, younger kids to get involved and use that. I guess it wasn't necessarily changing my mind of it. I was just kind of making me aware that this was out there because I never had seen these, and apparently you can get them over the counter, not really hard to buy. And but just the fact that there were little games on there that you could play, and it would entice the younger kids to get them. And then also they were putting what's it called, different flavors on there that were for kids, not necessarily for adults. You can have these little things that look like toys, and also that was eye-opening to me, and I think kind of made me change my perspective on vapes and how they can be injurious to our kids.
Okay, thank you. And if you weren't running in this race, what would you be looking for in a candidate to get your vote?
I look for candidates that are personable. I'm sorry, I'm being a little scattered today right now, but that really are honest, that show integrity, that show that they are, fervent in their beliefs, but will kind of change their mind too. Will listen and all. And I think that's somebody like myself. I feel like I can listen to both sides of the story, try to get the ideas from different folks, and go from there to kind of formulate my thoughts and my votes per se. So I would hope to find somebody along those lines that would kind of look at both sides of the story. When folks come in to talk to me about their product or their legislation or whatever, it's always like, okay, they're telling me their side, but I ask them, what would the other side also say about this? And then hopefully they're giving me the truth. And then if not, I'm going to go over to the other side too and ask them what their perspective is. And also, that's somebody I would look for, as a legislator, is to, somebody that would be open to hearing all sides of the story to formulate their best decisions.
Okay, we're going to move on to some more specific policy questions here. First up, what, if anything, should the legislature do to increase funding and resources for Arizona's public schools? And can you be specific about some of the policies that you would support?
Well, some of the things that we're not doing right now is we didn't pass Prop 123, which is we take land sales money from the state land, and that goes, there was a percentage of that goes to our schools. So I think it was don't quote me, 6.9%, something along those lines, that we were getting into our budget so that we could get back to the schools. And also we need to get a Prop 123 type program together. There was some debate on what the percentage should be and all. Even if it just stays what the same percentage was before, I think we need to do that. Definitely get some more money into our public schools. The other thing is the ESAs has just gotten out of control. The scholarship accounts, the vouchers have just gone out of control. Over $1 billion has gone towards that. And it needs accountability. It needs accountability, and it needs to go to students who really need it. The ones, what we had before was our kids with disabilities, because they had higher needs and they maybe weren't getting served as well in a public school. So they had to go to a different type of school that cost a little bit more and had different needs and all. So the ESA program has just been rife with abuse and fraud, and we really need to pull that back. I was actually talking with somebody one time, and they were telling me that all of their neighbors were doing it, and their neighbors went to private school. So, and her kids went to private school. It says she was like, I don't know if I should really, take it, but it's like it's free money. So, $7,000, it's free money. I don't know what they used it for, maybe tuition for their kid, to go to a private school, or like we saw some people buying trampolines and saxophones and grand pianos. I don't think that's what that money is intended for. And I really think that we need to rein that back. And like Ms. Travers said earlier, they said it was going to be $300 million. Yeah, we wish now that it was $300 million, because now it's nearly $1 billion.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a water question. Would you vote to impose mandatory water restrictions on Arizona households, like things like lawn watering limits, per person usage caps, higher prices for heavier users, even if it meant constituents had to rip out landscaping they've had for decades? Would you support those kind of restrictions?
No, no. And yeah, we can't be mandating as a state legislature. Our cities, especially Phoenix and Tempe and Chandler, have done a really great job of managing their water. And yes, there is going to be some increased fees. Those need to go to like infrastructure type things, maybe making sure that folks have the right kind of meters in their house. The smart meters are great because they'll tell you when your water use is going up, so if you have a leak, it'll be able to alert you to that leak in your house and all. We can incentivize people to rip out their grass. When I first moved into my house, the entire yard was grass, and now I just have a small portion that's grass now and put desert landscaping in. But I think we need to incentivize people, not punish them for that. And it should not be the role of the state legislature to mandate that. We can give the cities ideas of what can be done. We can encourage them through, especially our smaller towns, maybe by purchasing smart meters and other infrastructure that will help them to manage their water better and all. But no, it shouldn't be something that we as state legislature mandate to our public.
Okay. And my last policy question for you here. Arizona has cut taxes substantially over the past several years while facing continued demands for schools, transportation, housing, and water infrastructure. How would you decide when the state can afford another tax cut and when that money needs to stay in the general fund? How do you weigh cutting taxes with the needs of the state?
Well, first off, the flat rate tax that we implemented a few years ago, I think is not working for all Arizonans. It has cost us, and I believe the last number I heard was $2 billion worth of income that we could have had, income that could have paid for schools, income that could have paid for healthcare, income that could have paid for different types of programs that we need here in the state and all. And $2 billion is a nice chunk of change. When you figure I was fighting for in the budget for our area agency on aging to get $5 million. So $5 million, teeny tiny, $1 billion, a lot. So we need to weigh those types of things as far as tax cuts and all. Yeah, there might be places that we can do tax cuts, but we need to be very, very careful because what ends up happening is it hurts, local control. It hurts just for instance, we did to a tax cut on the rental tax. That cost Chandler, I think, $14 million. I think it cost Tempe, I think I heard like $19 million, and I think Phoenix like $90 million. That money was anticipated that they would get it. Now they don't have it. Now they need to figure out where they're going to make cuts. Is it going to come from police? Is it going to come from fire? Is it going to come from Parks and Rec? Is it going to come from community services and all? So we need to be really careful when we're asking for tax cuts. Maybe look more so at making it more fair for everybody. And maybe there's some of these tax credits that we need to kind of maybe do away with from some of our big corporations and all.
Gotcha. So would you support going back to a more tiered income tax structure instead of the flat tax?
Yes. Getting rid of the flat rate tax, yes.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to move on. I will ask you how you plan to vote on one of the propositions that'll be on Arizona's general election ballot. After I give a short summary, you'll have 1 minute to tell voters how you would vote and why. All right, let's talk about Proposition 141. This measure would ban state and local governments from taxing drivers based on how many miles they travel. It would also generally prohibit the government from tracking someone's vehicle mileage without that person's consent. How do you plan to vote for this proposition and why?
Okay. So this doesn't happen now, just so people know, this isn't happening. There's nothing in the works that we're going to do this. So, this is kind of fear mongering that, we're going to be taxing for or keeping track of your mileage or whatnot. But here's the thing is like, and I have an electric car. So electric cars don't pay the gas tax, right? So everybody else who has a gas vehicle is paying the gas tax. The gas tax goes towards paying for our roads and helping them to keep track of, maintain them and all and other things, of course, but that's one of the main things that goes towards. So if we don't have gas tax from my car, then and all these other thousands of people that do have electric cars, then the state is missing out on people to pay for that maintenance and all. So there has to be a way to fairly tax people like me who have an electric car so that I can be responsible too for helping to maintain those roads. And electric cars generally are heavier than gas cars, and so they cause a little bit more poundage on the roads. And also, I'll be voting no, and I'll be voting no on all of the referrals too, because they're all poorly written and poorly thought out, and all the ones that are left. And this one's a definite no also.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to a round of rapid fire questions. I didn't have time for this in the House debate, but sometimes it's kind of fun. These are short answer questions, so try to aim for like no more than 15-second answers. Might be kind of hard for the first one, but in one word, what's the single biggest issue facing Arizona right now, if you had to pick one thing?
Water. We just have, climate change has caused, lower water levels on the Colorado River, and water is a big issue right now we're working on.
Okay. What's one business in your district you'd take an out-of-town visitor to?
Restaurants. The Brunch Snob is great. They're right down the street from my house, and I like. They have wonderful food, so yes, but I can name a whole bunch of them. So yeah.
That's a good one.
Rigatoni, zupas, it's like, yes, mostly that we have some really great restaurants in our district.
Okay. And if you weren't running for office, what would you be doing tonight?
Oh, wow.
Just in general.
Probably reading a book. I like to read. Yeah, probably reading a book.
All right. Thank you so much. That's our last round of questions, and that means we've reached closing statements. Please take about 90 seconds to make your closing case to voters whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and the Clean Elections for allowing me to be on this program today. I am a two-term representative for District 12, and I just hope to continue my public service that I've been a career public servant of in the Senate and all. What I'm advocating for in our community is for elders. I work for seniors for over 25 years, helping them in the city of Phoenix, making sure that they're safe, can stay in their home, as long as possible. I'm a big advocate of education. I want to make sure that we pay our teachers well, that we have smaller class sizes, that our public schools are fully funded, and all. I have two sisters that are public ed teachers. I have a niece that's a new teacher. I have a sister who's a paraprofessional in a public school. So those are education, very, very important to me. We need good jobs and affordable housing here in our state. And I would like to bring businesses in that can provide good paying jobs. But we need the education for those good paying jobs, so that education is paramount there. And water, of course, is something that we really need to key in on here in the state of Arizona. We've done a great job here in the Valley and our active management areas, but we really need to look at what's happening in our rural communities and try to figure out how we can manage that water better so that we can sustain, through the generations here in Arizona. I appreciate, again, this opportunity. You can find more information about me on ContrerasForArizona.com. And I'm always open for meeting folks. I have a monthly meeting that I've been doing since I started at the house at the Brick Road Coffee in Tempe, once a month on Fridays, third Friday of the month from 4 to 6. So anybody's welcome to come by and visit and chat. I'm open door policy, and you can come and call me or visit anytime. But thank you, Nicole.
Okay, thank you. That concludes tonight's Q&A with Democratic candidate Patty Contreras, who's running for the State Senate in Legislative District 12. Thank you to our candidate for being here, and to our voters, thank you for tuning in and informing yourselves ahead of the November 3rd election. For official voter information, visit azcleanelections.gov.